The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's Hackin Cast with Bill Stearns. Really excited. So for anybody who doesn't know, Bill Stearns and Keith Chu, who's joining us for the pre-show banter today, they are both part of our sister company, Active Countermeasures. So it's awesome to have you guys joining us today. Also, if you're new to Hackin Casts, first off, thank you so much for being here and welcome to our community. All of the chat and QA for today is going to take place inside of our Discord server. There's two channels you'll need to pay attention to. The first one is the live chat channel. That's where we're going to be talking today. And then there's also the slides channel directly above that where you can grab the slide deck for today.
You have access to all the slides I'm going to cover today. So when I talk about some link that's about 16 miles long and has more characters than the Library of Congress, if you have the PDF, you can just actually click in it rather than having me try to read off every character over the presentation.
Can you imagine having to do that?
Oh,
Yeah,
that
right.
just
Crazy.
kills me. Yeah. This is where URL shorteners started. People
Yeah.
I don't want to read this off over the phone. It's too long.
Yeah, and I would always like say the wrong way for the slashes. Always.
Yeah.
I would do the
ones and L's. There we go.
Yeah.
I think you should do it at least once just so we can see how painful it is.
Yeah.
Oh. There was one Saturday afternoon where I was really bored. And I thought to myself, what is the least efficient way to monitor a network? And it turns out the answer is I run the program TCP dump that looks at every packet going through, and I feed the output that TCP dump gives, the text, sort of texty output, into a text-to-speech translator. And so every packet takes about 25 seconds to read off with this text-to-speech translator. It is the least efficient way to watch a network ever. I think I can guarantee that statement.
That could be like something that you like go to bed to.
Yes.
So you can, like, just totally tune out, kind of like listening to waves or something.
Oh, an ACK packet.
Yeah.
I could see a family member walking by. What are you listening to?
Yeah.
Is this
Gosh,
one of those
this is my new
Russian
podcast. Be quiet.
Yeah, is this one of those Russian spy FM stations that you managed to tune to?
Or it's like, aha, I knew you were an alien.
Couldn't put my finger on it until now. Now I've got evidence.
That's right, I have proof now. It's as close as we'll ever get to the scene in The Matrix where Keanu Reeves steps up to the monitors and says, "Can you really tell what's going on?" "Oh yeah, it looks weird at first, but after a while you just see brunette and blonde and redhead, and that's as close as we come."
So whenever I watch The Matrix, I feel like I get it. And then when I think about it later, I'm so confused.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Ed Scotus made this his life's pursuit for, I think, better part of a decade. Ed's one of the instructors over at the Sands Institute, and he would give evening, not presentations, but roundtables where he would talk about the philosophy of the Matrix. He would get so deep into this, and there is a lot there.
Yeah.
This is not just a sci-fi movie. This is talking about existence and religion and philosophy and everything else. But my gosh, how deep can you get for 3 movies? Now 4. Fourth one's coming up.
Yeah. Because I do. I watch it and I think, okay, yeah, I get that. And then like when I think about the whole thing right now, I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like, I don't know at all what's going on.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Megan. Oh, too cool.
Hey,
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for anybody who is just joining us, or this is your first webcast with us, just so you know, this is not the actual presentation quite yet. This is what we like to call pre-show banter. It's just a great time for us to get to know the community better and for you to get to know us a little better. I'm also going to remind everyone again, if you haven't already joined us on Discord, please do so now. We're in the Wild West Hacking Fest Discord server and in the live chat channel with the little bullhead. Right above that, you can also find the slides channel with the slide deck for today.
Please
so
join in.
What we like to say is, you show up early because we show up early. We show up early because you show up early. It's just this vicious cycle that we all love. And it's actually a way for us to get to know each other as coworkers because we don't get to see each other.
Yeah.
So it's
I
super
agree.
cool.
In fact, I was just thinking it's awesome to see yourself and Velda. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw you live.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm still alive. My dogs are gonna go crazy here.
We strongly suspected. We really did. Yeah. Yep. No, that vicious circle, Megan, that's what turns into 24-hour pre-show banter webcasts.
Yeah.
This is where we want to up the game a little bit.
That's right.
If you guys are going to show up early, we're going to show up 24 hours early.
Yeah. That was something.
I'm not sure if I want to commit to that or not. So.
No. I have my hat off to all the people who did most of that webcast. Everybody got a little break, just like a Guinness World Record. You do get 5 minutes, 5 minutes an hour, I think, on most challenges, and it still counts. But to be able to pull off most of that 24 hours, my hat is off to you people. I'm not sure I could do that anymore.
Yeah, there's a 0 probability of that happening in my life.
Okay,
I showed up for the end at like 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning just to experience the whole thing. And that was something. Yeah,
I agree. It was awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
I know I sound like a total geek when I say this, but it literally did kind of change my life a bit, you know? I mean, it really was that good.
Wow.
Just watching the part for the Innocent Lives Foundation and what they do and the good work that they're really out there doing. And that is just amazing. And that the whole thing was for that organization is just awesome in my opinion.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So
Wonderful.
for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about right now, a few weeks ago at this point, one of our sister companies, Black Hills, put together a 24-hour pre-show banter con-a-thon, something named similar to that. But it was basically 24 hours of different team members, community members doing stuff like this. And it was also to help raise money for the Innocent Lives Foundation. I know there was like thousands of dollars raised for Innocent Lives because of that. So it was a really awesome event.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny too, because you cannot find it on YouTube at this point.
Oh no, it's not. They purposely are not doing it.
Yep. So if you missed it live, unfortunately, you can't catch all the weird goofiness in the recording because it was a little too much for us to want to share.
Yeah,
But
it's kind of like us growing up in like the 70s and 80s. Like there's no proof of all of the tomfoolery that happened back then. And thankfully, there's no proof of all of that.
Yes, the word I was looking for was evidence, but yes, I know you're exactly right.
Yes.
The goal for that was to raise $1,000 for the Innocent Lives Foundation. Maybe somebody could come up with a URL for that at some point. And the actual amount raised was $31,068 over 24 hours. The audience was just wonderful. You guys were great to be able to not only listen in and have fun, but to commit to so much. That's a significant portion of a year's work for one of their analysts. That's going to make a big difference to be able to say we've got another person who can come on and do this type of research.
Oh, yeah. And if you don't know who Innocent Lives Foundation is, we're going to share a link inside Discord for everyone to check them out. They're a really awesome organization for you to look into. I did see, though, in our chat, Ryan had made a comment about Ask Shelby about her 3D printed poop chocolate emoji, which I can't ignore that being posted. So, so as you guys know, this Hackin Cast is going to be about 3D printing from the ground up with Bill Stearns. One of the things that we were talking about, though, right before we started pre-show banter was how there is a 3D printer you can buy that prints chocolate. So who wouldn't love a 3D printer where you could literally print like chocolate into any shape that you want? And I feel like the poop emoji would kind of be perfect because it might look a little too real, but I mean, it's still chocolate.
And as,
Well, I
as we were
just think
saying,
about the things that I would print and like give to people that I don't really like. I mean, it would still be kind of nice, but kind of in a backhanded compliment kind of way. So, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I love
And the
that
nice
that's your
part is,
go-to.
not every 3D print comes out. You get a number of them that aren't going to work, and you may see one today. I don't make any promises. With a chocolate 3D print, even the mistakes are still darn tasty.
Yeah.
Kind of weird,
That's what I
right?
was thinking. When it comes to chocolate, I don't care what shape it is.
Yeah, yeah. Give me the one when it's all mashed together. I'll have that. Thank you very much.
Yep. Just
Uh,
eat your mistakes away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's gonna know? That's right.
That's actually really solid life advice. Just eat it away. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, another mistake. I'm gonna have to eat it.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah.
That's right.
There's no other way. I can't remelt
Yeah.
it. I just have to eat it.
Oh.
We were also talking about, and before pre-show, Velda's question of the day. Did you find it, Velda?
I did find my question of the day. So we haven't done this in a while, but here's the question. Listen up real good. I want to see your answers in Discord. Nearly 1/3 of people say finding this on a sandwich would ruin the whole thing. What is it?
Oh, I know.
We're not allowed to say, is that right? We have to wait until people have put their answers in Discord, is that right?
Oh,
We
no.
can take a guess. Yeah.
Take a guess.
Oh, wow.
For me, it'd be mustard, but that's a personal.
Wow.
Mine is pickles. Mm-mm.
Pickle. Oh, in a sandwich? Wow. I can see off to the side, but wow, that's a tough one.
Mm-mm.
I would think a live octopus would turn me off very quickly. To each their own.
I had
wiggly.
Yeah.
I
But
was
when
in
when the top piece of bread starts falling off because this thing's kicking its tentacles around, no, I just no.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say live or
just in
deceased.
general is not appetizing.
Wow. Off to the side while the answers are coming into Discord, I've got to tell you, my wife and I traveled to Japan, and we went out to dinner with a good friend and a coworker of mine who went to an authentic sushi restaurant, and they mostly ordered for us. We largely ate what they had. At the end, this friend of mine and his son both ordered something, and I couldn't obviously tell what the Japanese was. He was speaking fluent Japanese. When it came, it was blowfish or fugu.
Ooh.
And if you haven't heard of this, take a quick look on Wikipedia someday. This is a fish that's poisonous. And if it's not prepared exactly right, and I mean exactly right, you stand a good chance of not making it out of that restaurant alive. And my logic was, I don't care how many years this person has been making fugu and how many years they apprenticed before they could actually serve a piece of fish to anyone. I do not like any meal where I have to calculate the odds of leaving the restaurant alive afterwards. I'm sorry. That might have been 0.00001%, and it's still too much.
Well, we've got some good guesses going in here. My thought process went exactly to like a hair, someone else's hair, a fingernail, blood, that kind of stuff. We've got lettuce. We've got head cheese. You guys know what head cheese is?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I didn't know.
Someone said current record around here is finding a broom straw in a McDonald's chicken sandwich.
Yep.
We got cilantro. Tim Kelleher said my hair, so little left. Hi, Tim Kelleher. We're glad you're here.
Anchovies.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever tried them, but boy, that just that people know you either love them and you're in like 10% of the population, or you're in the 90% who can't deal with anything. We had a pizza restaurant here in town called Everything But Anchovies. And strangely enough, if you asked really nicely, they would actually come up with anchovies, but they wouldn't put it on the menu.
Oh man.
So
I've never been a fan of anchovies.
Yeah,
I
I can see that.
Tig
Just the
said
whole-
his sister found a lizard in her salad.
Oh,
Yikes.
wow.
Oh,
Wow.
This is taking a turn.
Well, then, poor critter.
Oh. So Melda, how does the question of the day work? Do you wait till the end of the webcast and come
I
up with an
do.
answer?
I do. I kind of
All right.
wait till the end of the day because are the end of this, not to the end of the
Pre-show.
webcast, just to the end of pre-banter.
Got it.
And I like to get as many. If somebody guesses it right, here's what I'm going to do. If somebody guesses this one right, I'm going to give them a $30 gift card or discount code to the Spearfish General Store, and they can get a T-shirt.
Yes, you can grab
Lovely.
your I only show up for the pre-show shirt.
Oh, I forgot
nice.
to wear mine today.
I know. I wore mine
Oh,
yesterday.
How sad. Oh, well done, Shelby.
Oh, Velda, we matched though. We
We
both
do.
got our
We both have the.
wedding on accident.
I just about wore my pre-show banter shirt though.
Nice.
Oh, well done. Keith's just
So
looking way
nobody's
too
guessed
comfortable.
it so far. So it wasn't, or are you going to
I
tell
have
us?
not seen the answer yet. So
Wow.
if I do see the answer, I will let you know. And again, I'll read the question.
Thank you, because I feel like this is trick
So
questions.
people can keep guessing. Nearly 1/3 of people say finding this on a sandwich would ruin the whole thing. What is it? I'm gonna just type it in here.
I'm surprised that one.
That's a lot. 1/3 is a pretty significant.
It is. Yeah.
Amount.
I'm surprised they could all agree on one thing. So,
I
Yeah.
know.
Is this in general or is this just America too? Because I know different countries have different customs for sandwiches.
I think this is America. I think this is US.
Okay. Because in Europe, American cheese is considered an anachronism. They
Yes.
are not. They do not consider American cheese cheese. It is a fake imitation of something that almost kind of looks like cheese. If
It's a cheese
didn't
product.
smell well that day. Yes, ZE product. Yes.
Mhm.
Now
Yeah,
you're
it's-
scared.
Cheese with the Z.
Yep.
It's
Can you imagine if there was like a 3D printer of like that made with like cheese? That would be good to make like your own like cheese stick.
and you could probably
You-
do it with American cheese because it's like rubber.
Or Velveeta. You could do it, but it would be really tricky to get the temperatures right. You've got to have it hot enough that the cheese will melt, and that's not terribly complex. That's actually a very low melting temperature, but you also you'd almost have to put a cooler in the 3D printer so that what landed on the metal plate would very quickly cool down. It wouldn't keep melting and just kind of spreading out all over the plate. That's
Yeah.
a tough one. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Have you ever watched that show, How It's Made?
Yeah. It's been a
Yeah.
while,
So
but
like
yes.
it makes me think of that. Like when I was growing up, I grew up in outside of Indianapolis, and we actually got to go to the Hostess factory. And like, I actually got like a Twinkie like off the conveyor belt. It was like the best. And then you're just totally ruined for all the other stale Twinkies after that, which is probably a good thing. But
It's hard to
but
think of a Twinkie as fresh. It just
I
really,
know.
Yep.
Yeah. It was crazy.
yeah. I'm sure that with about 30 seconds of searching on Google, I could find people who've done studies of, two Twinkies, one opened immediately and one left in its wrapper for 15 years. And how do they look different from each other? And nope, no change whatsoever.
Yeah.
not much. Yeah.
I think that I'm perfectly preserved inside
Yes.
for all
Yes.
of the food that was developed in the 70s and 80s that I consume.
Guys,
Pristine.
Ding
we have a
dongs.
winner.
We have a
We
winner?
actually have a right answer. Do I
Oh,
want to announce it now, or do I want
yeah,
to wait?
Yes,
If
do it.
somebody's got it, that's great. Crank it up. What is it?
It
Da-
is
da-da-da.
olives.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Third.
Yeah.
I
feel like-
don't understand. I don't compute because I love olives.
See,
Yeah,
I
me
do
too.
too, but I feel like olives is one of those foods where you either love it or you hate it. You know,
Yes.
it's kind of like a pineapple on pizza kind of
Hate
deal.
crowd.
Yeah, you're right.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know.
smithereens, you got to be
Wow.
kidding me.
What did he say?
He found
No.
a GIF of someone using Cheese Whiz with a 3D printer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Ah,
Wow.
awesome. So let me see if I can go back here and find it's Burman, Birmun. Looks like the first person who answered it correctly. So
Hey.
I'm gonna go up here and send you a message with a code for $30 to Spearfish General Store.
Sweet.
Awesome.
And actually, it's not really that common of a sandwich ingredient, really.
It really isn't.
No,
No.
I think it might
Thank you
weird
for
me out on a sandwich too. Even though I love olives, if I saw it on a sandwich, I'd be a little like, why? You know?
I've got a family member that loves Kalamata olives on pizza. Those apparently cook reasonably well and kind of
Yeah.
come out somewhat tasty.
Olives on pizza was my go-to when I was growing up.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I
Okay.
like olives on pizza. Black olives.
Interesting.
And for
So-
anybody just joining us, this is not the actual Hackin cast quite yet. This is what we like to call pre-show banter. We still have about 8 minutes left of it, but it's just a great way for us to get to know the community and for you to get to know us a little better. And as we love to say, you know, we show up early because you show up early, then you show up early because we show up early. It's that vicious cycle we all love so much. If you haven't joined us in the chat in Discord already, please do so now. I'm going to share the link again for everybody. But we are in the live chat channel on the Wild West Hacking Fest server. And right above the live chat, you'll see the slides channel where you can find the PDF of the slide deck for today.
Jim
And-
Ducroisset, I thought you had my favorite GIF with the cutting the fugu apart, but I think the 3D cheese printer, Smithereens, you got my winner so far. That's great.
Yeah, they
Hey,
come up
guys.
with some good-
Smithereens was our volunteer of the year.
Oh, he
He's
was.
Yes, we love smithereens.
Oh,
Definitely.
Guys, can I just say something?
Of
Next
course.
at this time, we have another Hacking Cast, and John Bevers and John Strand and Erica will all be in San Diego doing a site tour for the Wild West Hacking Fest coming up
Woohoo!
in May
Fantastic.
20.
Looking forward to going out there.
Yes, we're going out there to just kind of look at some options for fun things to do out there, where we want to hold our dinner and just kind of look at the augmented reality stuff. And so we're pretty excited. Tickets are on sale
Yes.
for the event, both virtual and in person. It is May 4th through the 6th for the con. We'll have pre-conference training the 3rd and the 4th. We're still working on the schedule for training, but we should have that up by the end of by the end of the month. So pretty darn excited. So we're going to find a really cool spot to do pre-banter next week in San Diego.
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be nice actually going places without having to like wear a bubble suit and
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
I
I'm
did-
excited for San Diego. I haven't been to the West Coast like that since I was a kid, so it's gonna
Yeah.
be nice.
So beautiful there.
So Mookie was wondering when the plans for Evil Bill 1.0 get released. The Evil Bill has been actually at version 0.99 for 54 years. And, I think it's almost ready for release. We just have to pick a license and say what happens if you actually run it.
That's why we're all careful what we say around you. We do not want to push you over the edge. So.
No, don't release the Stearns. No, don't release the Stearns.
We're always, yes, Bill. Yes, Bill. Hey, Bill.
Back away slowly. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at the chat here. One of our nerd herders said, Shelby, you know, like Subway. And then someone responded with, does anyone like Subway? I think tolerate is more appropriate. And I would kind of agree with that comment. You know, Subway is great, but it's never really been a go-to of mine. So.
Well, it's kind of like McDonald's. It's there and it's easy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's one of those. I think the only like fast food place that I ever really crave and like is Chick-fil-A, and that's because you just can't beat their nuggets.
Yeah.
We have Raisin Canes here. Do you guys have Raisin Canes? Does anybody know what?
We don't hear, but I've been the one, and it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. I have to tell you though, we went out last night for dinner, and we went to our favorite Mexican place, and it was horrible. I was so bummed. I'm gonna eat the leftovers today for lunch. It's filling.
Yeah, I feel like if you go somewhere enough, you're always gonna have at least one bad experience there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yep.
So growing up out in Indiana again, having like White Castle, like a real in-person, not the ones that you put in the microwave. Has anyone else ever experienced a true fresh White Castle?
Yep.
No.
Yeah, Illinois, Indiana. In fact, well, I'm in Southwest Florida, and they just built one in Orlando a couple of months ago.
What?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it was a
Did it come
huge
in those
opening.
little
Considering
boxes?
taking a road trip. So.
Oh, you haven't been there yet? Because like
No, we
growing up,
haven't.
you would come in these little boxes. Oh, it's just so good.
Yeah, the last time I had White Castle was probably 15 or so years ago. I think I was in Indiana at the time, but yeah, so
Yeah.
hopefully it's as good as I remember.
Yeah. Like that's so disappointing. Like you grow up and like you have this like awesome thing and you try it like later and it's like, well, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
So
who owns this franchise? You didn't nail it.
You know, that actually happened to me a couple of years ago. I was at the store, and for whatever reason, I thought, well, let me buy a box of Fruity Pebbles. I used to love those when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's like pure sugar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
2 spoonfuls. I was like, no, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
We all have stories like that. Hey, Shelby, do you have anything else you want to cover before we get going?
Yeah, we got
Actually, yeah, you basically took the words right out of my mouth. We are 2 minutes away from the start time. So I have a couple housekeeping notes I just want to go over for everyone before we get started. First off, I just want to remind everybody about our upcoming event, Wild West Hackin Fest Way West. We did mention it for a minute there. It's going to be the beginning of May next year in San Diego. We currently have in-person and virtual tickets on sale, and we'll have training open as well before the end of the month. Along with that, we do these free webcasts about once a week. So please check out our website for all the other ones we have upcoming. We also do something called the roundups as well, which we have one the first week of December. It's going to be the Purple Team Roundup. And the roundups are basically the same thing as the Hackin Cast, except they are 4 or 5 hours long, I think, for this one. And we'll have 5 different presenters talking about different things in relation to purple teaming. Along with that, you've been seeing these slides go across the screen. A lot of these are titles for different trainings for our sister company, Anti-Siphon Training, which now has their own website. So if you like our Hackin Casts and want more of like a serious training, please check those out. We have full priced ones, but we also have ones that are pay what you can, which is a pay scale. Some are $0 and some are $25 to $4.95. And for this Hackin Cast, I'm going to remind everyone one more time to join us on Discord. We are in the Wild West Hackin Fest server in the live chat channel. That's the one with the little bullhead. Right above that, you'll find the slides channel, which has the slide deck for today. Another common question we get asked is, yes, this is being recorded. In fact, it is now being live streamed to YouTube, which is something new that we started doing recently. So if you can't stick around for the whole thing, that is okay. You can catch it right after it ends on our YouTube channel. And if you're currently joining us for YouTube, hello, and thank you for being one of the first people to join us there. Just to let everybody know, if you are joining us through GoToWebinar, you'll receive a certificate of attendance for today in an email tomorrow afternoon, but you do have to join us through GoToWebinar. So if you're on YouTube with us, make sure you click the link to GoToWebinar in the description to ensure that you get your certificate. And with that, we've hit the top of the hour. So Bill, I'm going to pass it along to you to start the webcast.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much,
having me.
Shelby. I really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Bill.
We'll see you guys later. All righty, main screen. Here we go. Let's see if this is going to work. There we go. Fantastic. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn off the webcam for the moment, but we will do some live demos a little bit further along, and you'll be able to actually see how a 3D printer works. Let me start in, though, real quick with just a little bit of background about what 3D printing is, and then we'll get into how it actually works. I want to have everybody here understand the basic ideas behind 3D printing because it's not obvious. If you've never seen one before, there's nothing that tells you how it works. So let's go through the basic concepts. And I will say that if you've done 3D printing before, if you own a 3D printer, if you use a 3D printer regularly at work, a lot of this is going to be review. Everybody's welcome to stay, but don't be surprised if this is some stuff you already know. And we encourage questions over in the Pound live chat channel, as Shelby said, on the Wild West Hacking Fest Discord. And we'd love to have you join us there. That way, if you have questions, other people can see the answers as well. I'd like everybody to consider going to the URL there. This is a free ebook made by the company called PreShow. Josef Prusa, or Prussia, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, lives in Czechoslovakia and runs Prusa 3D printers, prusa3d.com. He's been making these printers using previously printed 3D printers for, I would guess, about a decade or more. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the printers that they have there. This is not a sales pitch. I don't get any commission. But the printers are at a really nice level for good features, but not so expensive that you couldn't purchase them. They're still somewhat expensive. You wouldn't just go out and buy this on an impulse, but they are at a really nice price point. So if this topic is of interest to you, I would suggest you go to that link, download the ebook. Some of what I'm going to talk about today is covered in there, and frankly, in much better detail. If you'd like to get a printed copy, you can actually get it from that link as well. If you get the electronic version, they ask you simply to sign up for their mailing list. And like any mailing list, if you decide you're just not interested, you can always unsubscribe, but I think it's a reasonable trade-off. As he does talk about some of their products, but not in a way that says you must buy our stuff. They just use their products as examples of how to do 3D printing. TIG, Prusas are amazing, very quick shipping too, considering it's coming from the EU. And I would only temper that statement a little bit, that it partly depends on what their current load is and where they are with getting parts in, because obviously everybody's suffering supply chain issues at the moment. Mine took, I think, 4.5 months to come here, and I was good with that. I knew I was paying in advance for it, but check what they say for their shipping schedule when you place an order. It may take a little longer. When you stop and think about a normal paper printer, the process is relatively straightforward. You need the printer itself, you need paper and toner, and you need a document that you want, but you need it formatted in a way that that printer can understand. When you add all three of those together, you get a printed sheet of paper with X by Y inches, 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 or some other size. all straightforward, right? When you switch over to 3D printing, you don't change all that much. You need a 3D printer. You need what's called filament, which is, we'll just call it the stream of plastic coming in. And you need a design file, which is also formatted for that printer. And what you end up is a 3D printed object, X inches by Y inches by Z inches. So the printer gets this filament fed in on one side. Let me switch over to a webcam and I will show you. Here we go. Just a moment. And there is the filament. So you get a spool of this, a kilogram, a half kilogram, depends on what size you get. And the filament is just this thin stream of plastic. And I'm going to hold up a little bit in front of the webcam. You may not be able to see it very clearly, but it's a 1.75 millimeter wide stream of plastic coming in. When that comes in, the plastic is melted at a nozzle at something between, say, I think 165 and 260 degrees. It depends on which type of filament you're using, and the printer knows how hot to make it in order to melt it at just the right temperature. When the melted plastic comes out of a nozzle, it comes down onto the print sheet, and then you build up your print layer by layer. So I'm going to show you this in just a minute. I'm just going to ask you to take my word for it for just a moment. Those layers are 0.15 millimeters high by default, but can be as fine as 0.05 millimeters up to 0.25. As you might guess, if you make a finer or thinner layer, 0.05 millimeters or 0.7, 0.07 or 0.1, those layers are going to be much finer and clearer and good for finished product, but they're going to take longer to print because you have more layers you've got to print to make the same object. If you're just trying to do a draft, if you just want to do a quick check to see how it's going to look in general, but you don't really care if it looks great, you can make the print much more quickly by going up to 1/4 millimeter layers or something else larger than 0.15. So here's an example of a 3D printer, and this is the one I'm actually going to be showing you later. I just wanted to include it in the slides so everybody have a copy. Can you see my mouse on top of this? Can somebody say yes in Discord if you can? We'll assume you can. Okay. Well, the nozzle is right here. This is the part that heats up the plastic to 200, somewhere between 160 and 260 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what that comes out to on Celsius, apologies. The filament itself is fed through this plastic tube. Oops, sorry. It's fed through this plastic tube down to the hot nozzle. And so actually the filament is fed in off to the side here. This is just showing you the printer without the filament coming in. And it is placed down onto this metal sheet. You get these sheets are actually replaceable. You can actually pick it up off of the printer and bend it to try to get the print off more easily. The plate that you're using moves back and forth, and the nozzle moves left and right on this bar, and the nozzle also moves up and down on this bar. So you have all 3 degrees of freedom. That's how you can make a 3D print. You do the lowest layer and then you move the head up a little bit. You do the next layer and then you move the head up a little bit. You do the next layer and you move the head up a little bit. You'll see this in just a minute. There's also a little control panel here that lets you decide what you want to print and do some of the basic controls. So we talked about the filament 1.75 millimeter is the standard size for all of these. And the nice part about that is that you don't have to buy filament from any particular source. You need to buy a type of filament that your printer knows how to deal with, but there are a relatively small number of those. As I showed down in the second section, PLA, PETG are the most commonly used ones. They're the simplest to work with. There are slight differences in how they work and how they deal with, for example, temperature. ASA or ABS are the same thing. They're a little bit harder to work with. And Flex is the other one that I can think of. This one is more flexible than the first three. It's good for something like if you're trying to print a case for a cell phone and you need it to bend a little bit to get the cell phone in or out. That's a good use for Flex. These spools, 500 grams or a kilogram, are the common sizes. You get one color on a spool, and they last for a long time. I can have a single spool that will last me months and months unless I'm using it very heavily. When I first got this, I was making mask clips, and I was using the orange PETG, which was slightly less expensive when used for PPE. And I actually went through a couple of spools of that because I was making these mask clips so commonly. What you get out of this is generally strong, but it is not. It's not perfect. You don't want to leave this in a very hot environment. Direct sunlight can warp the material or maybe even bleach it a little bit, and you can break them. It's a relatively sturdy construction, but you can break these pieces because they're essentially plastic. All right, so here's another picture of the filament spools that you can get. What PreShow likes to do is they put an example of a finished product using that particular color so you have a chance to see it when you order it. So the design file that you're going to feed in is called an STL file. There are multiple formats involved here. I'm going to keep it just down to two that are the most common that you're going to work with. STL is the original design. Let me actually switch to the next slide and show you one. This is a picture of an STL file. So the software that loaded this in knew how to turn that 3D image, 3D design, into something that you could look at from a perspective. What I have here are Ethernet cable clips. Each one of those openings is just right for fitting in an Ethernet cable. So if you're trying to keep a data center organized, you can use these clips that go anywhere from, I think, 4 openings up to 16, and simply slide a bunch of Ethernet cables in and not have them hanging around quite as badly as before. It's a very quick and easy one to print, and if you work in a data center, you might look into that. It's a good way to keep things organized. So back to the previous slide, we take that STL design and we hand it into a piece of software called a slicer. I'm not going to actually show you the slicer today. It's a little bit like any kind of design program. You load in an image and you say, I want to output it in a different format. And you basically get asked, what kind of printer is this going to? And what type of material do you expect is going to get used? These are material specific because this G-code file has to tell the printer what temperature to heat it up to. And the G-code file has individual movements. What are the things that I need this 3D printer to do to actually get this material out and make this design? So where do I place the head? How do I move the lower plate? What temperature does the lower plate need to be, and what temperature does the nozzle or the hot end need to be? And when you build up all of these instructions, you get all of the instructions needed to print it. Finally, you send the G-code file to the printer. Now, once you've got that design, I'll show you the actual finished product in a minute. You can get these design files from lots of places. If you do a Google search for what you're interested in and 3D space print space STL, you're likely to find 7 or 8 options. Most of these are going to be free. At worst, you might have a couple of ads you've got to look through while you're finding your particular object. Occasionally they're paid, and I have no problem with that, because if somebody's going to take the time to write a good design, a good STL file that handles a particular task or does something that's a little bit weird or rare, I have no problem paying them for their time. So you may find that some of these are for pay as well. You can also make your own. There are both downloadable programs and, thank you, Noopy, I appreciate it. They're downloadable programs, and they're also web services where you can log in and say, here is what I want to have show up, and here are the outer borders, and I want a square here, and I want a circle on top of that, and cut out this opening in the middle. I'm not all that good at this level, so I tend to go with pre-built ones, but you absolutely can make your own. And this is really where 3D printing is going to shine. It isn't that I can download a trinket from somewhere and print it out, as much as I find that kind of cool all in itself. It's the fact that I can make anything. I can make my own design. I can write my own stuff. And if I don't know how, I can hire somebody to do it for me. I've done that a couple of times already. And then I can get that object coming out on my 3D printer with very little effort at all. It's just a wonderful way to go to be able to make your own stuff rather than depending on somebody else making it for you. So let's switch back here. I'm going to show you a printed 3D object. So that Ethernet, I don't have the exact Ethernet clip that I showed you on that picture, but I've got a finished product here. This is a 4x4 opening. Let's see if we can do this right. There we go. This is a 4x4 opening Ethernet clip that I could use in a data center. It's got a little square rectangular opening at the top. So if you want to put a lock tie through it and tie this to part of your vertical riser, for example, you can do that with that opening there. It's very little effort. This takes probably about, if I printed a bunch of them all at once, it might take an hour and a half to get them all out on the 3D printer. All right. So I've got an interesting use for this. This is one of my favorite stories. When the people on the International Space Station need something like a wrench. Well, think about how it happened, more than 15 years back or more than 10 years back. You waited for the next supply ship to come up. That supply ship could be 8 months off. Somebody would have to come up with this, test it for space worthiness, make sure that you can handle the weight of it, because if it's a heavy object, you got to account for a whole lot of fuel to get it up. Oops, sorry, left the webcam on. Let's kill that. Thank you very much. And this was just a pain. It meant that any project could get halted for months simply because you're missing some particular part. Why not 3D print it? And this was I think a rhetorical question early on, but somebody's like, why don't we? So there's more detail on the 2 links on this page, but on the next page, there is the 3D printer you can find on the International Space Station. And this is awesome. If I need a part, the worst case is we don't have a design for this yet. Somebody calls down to the ground and said, hey, can you guys make up an STL for me? And for this particular wrench, which we need for this object, it's got to have these openings or whatever. They go to sleep. Next morning, somebody's taken the time to go and write up an STL, sent it up, and they feed it into this. And out comes that wrench. Now, that's just glorious. You've turned what might have been a optimistically 4-month, pessimistically 12-month wait into, hey, we can have this tomorrow. And frankly, if we already have the design and we just need to print it again, we can have it this afternoon. Out it comes. So the last thing to consider is not every 3D print works, and there's material left over, and you've got this wrench that you might have literally needed once, just long enough to open up this one particular container. I don't need it anymore. So what do? Well, that spare material can actually get recycled. Instead of having to go and send up, 5 kilos of filament on every supply ship, let's just throw what we have back in what's essentially a low power oven, melt it down, and we'll make new filament out of it. You can do this on the ground too. I actually have a good colleague who has told me that he has one of these that can actually make filament. Yes, make sure you include malt vinegar or else they don't taste right. Exactly right. So you can do this on the ground too. I've not actually tried it myself, but I understand it is possible. You just have to pay attention to which type of filament you have so that you keep your garbage separate, and then you can melt it down some afternoon when you've got a little free time. What do you use it for? And this is where a 3D printer is much like, let's say, a ball peen hammer. If you've got a use for a ball peen hammer, it suddenly becomes a tool. If you don't have a use for a ball peen hammer, at best it's a toy, at most it's a reason to go down to Lowe's, waste an hour, come back and never use it because you stick it up on a workbench somewhere. Well, the same is true of 3D printing. If you have a use for it, this is great, but not everybody does. But let me give you a couple of ideas. On those links I put out earlier are some excellent examples of things you can print right now with a 3D printer. And some of those range from toys and parts. I see a day where you don't actually call up the parts department for a manufacturer anymore and say, I need this, and they mail you something. Instead, they say, here's the STL file, you can print it at home. And we'll talk a little bit more about what to do when you don't have a 3D printer. Hold on just a second, I'll cover that as well. Cases for different things. You can print 3D tools. Someone had asked, can I do something like plates or utensils or things for food? And the answer is sort of no. It really kind of should be no. And the reason is that that plastic in general, and this plastic in particular, is not easily cleaned. What we think of as a piece of solid plastic, in fact, has all kinds of little microscopic holes for bacteria to live in. And so it's very hard to keep clean. There are ways around that. You can do something like a plate, and then you cover it in what's called food safe epoxy. And what you end up with is something you absolutely could use as a plate and you absolutely could get clean. But don't think you're just going to take something right off the 3D printer and use it to eat your fries. Sorry, Praxmax. The last one that I think is a very good direct use is prototyping. I talked about making up an STL file and using it to print on this little 3D printer, and if I need something bigger, I might shrink it down to quarter size and print it there. But the point comes where I need that part, I need to sell that part, I need it in bulk, I need it printed in metal or wood or aluminum, something else. Do I have to drop all of the work that I did and start over from scratch? And the answer obviously is no. The STL file that you generate with this process can be handed off to a service bureau. I've done this a couple of times. I take an STL file that I want. I did this quite commonly before I had a 3D printer. I would upload the file, they would show me it, and then they would list off, here are all the materials you can get. And you pick one of them and you pick a color, and then it tells you, okay, that's going to be $7.34 each. How many would you like? And what shows up in your mailbox less than a week later are 5 copies of this particular Raspberry Pi case or whatever you happen to upload. So you don't have to have the finished product, and that same STL file can be used at a service bureau to build thousands of these things once you're happy with the design. So you use your 3D printer for prototyping and then send it off to somebody else for the big stuff. Nupi asks, is there a lot of odor and fumes when 3D printing? Is it safe to use indoors? PLA and PETG are the 2 types of materials I talked about earlier as the easiest ones to use. There's not a lot of odor and fumes. I don't smell it at all. However, there are other types where you really do want to have very good ventilation, or you want to do the printing outside. And this is exactly why I stick with PLA and PETG, because I can do this safely indoors. You take a look at the material description itself. The book that I talked about early on has much more detail about it, and will tell you how you need to handle these and which ones really should be outdoors. And as for being a bit noisy, you'll see in just a minute. We'll actually show you a live demo right now. Here we go. So I'm going to switch over to the webcam, and I'm going to show you actually doing a 3D print. Here's the little control. I think you're probably seeing this in reverse, and there's not too much I can do about that right now. My apologies, but I'm going to select print. I'm going to come down to a toothpaste squeezer. And the end result that I'm looking for is this object right here, which goes around the bottom of a toothpaste tube and allows you to slide this object up and keep the toothpaste up near the top. It tells me that the print time is 28 minutes. I'm using PLA. It's going to use 3 grams of it, or 1.11 meters of PLA, and I select print. I'm going to leave this running for just a moment, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see it slightly larger. And what's going to happen is that the unit is going to take it's going to take about a minute to get up to temperature. Oh, okay, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. Everybody else can see it right. I'm only backwards. There we go. So it takes a minute to get up to temperature. I'm just going to keep talking while it goes. So remember, we have this spool of PLA over to the right, and I will show you that in just a minute as the material starts to slide into the printer, as it starts doing the printing. But the first thing it's going to do, once it's gotten up to temperature and it's almost there, is it's going to go back and forth over the metal sheet and make sure that the alignment is correct. This used to be a very manual process, one that took a long time, and it was a real pain. Anytime you picked up your printer and set it down somewhere else, you had to go through this manual alignment. Now, the printers are smart enough to be able to tell that you are about to print, and they will figure out whether you have the heights correct to do this printing. Now, is there STL for that spool roller holder? Yes, there is. So if you look down at the bottom here of my spool of material, this is what comes with the 3D printer. It is these are 3D printed parts with some metal rollers in the middle. And in a minute, you'll see the spool of material start to turn, and it just allows it to turn freely. Yes, you can print your own of these. You still have to buy the metal rollers, but that's a small piece of it. In fact, if you're really keen on this, you can print your own 3D printer on a 3D printer. Obviously, you have to have one to start with, but this is how Prusa makes their money. They take the design for the 3D printer they want to print, and they print it on an old 3D printer. So they have banks and banks of these running constantly. So that just finished up checking the heights to make sure that everything is ready to go. And now we're going to slightly switch over. It's going to heat up a little bit more because it's got to have 215 degrees on the nozzle. And I think I don't remember what the temperature on the print bed is. You see how it's going left to right? What it just did, and there's no way I can show you this very clearly, but it printed a very thin stream of filament on the front to make sure that you have all of the bubbles out, that you have a clean flow of all of the current filament. And then it goes back and it starts in the center and starts printing this toothpaste tube holder. I have to give an admission of guilt here. I've done demos and live demos and hands-on demos, and I've done labs and all kinds of things for decades. And one of the things I know is only show something that you know is going to work. When you're doing 3D printing, there is no guarantee. And I will also tell you that despite using a brand new roll of filament, which is likely to help because it's in good shape, it hasn't gotten moisture over time, and also using a very, there we go, a clean metal plate at the bottom, this has not worked this morning. So this is unfortunately going to be one of those Julia Childs moments where you stick the pie in the left-hand side of the oven and then you quietly say, oh, look over on the right-hand side, there's a pre-cooked pie ready to go. Do you see how it's already peeling up from the metal sheet? It shouldn't do that. It does. And so I already know that this will not be a successful print. It should have stayed stuck this whole time, but it's already peeled entirely off. So it's one of these where I should have used some hairspray or glue, or I should have gone back and cleaned it with light dish soap. Strangely enough, that's all you need. You need to just have fingerprints and oils and all the other pieces off before you can be reasonably confident that things are going to work. And the fact that I'm picking up my finished design and carrying it off to the side means it just plain did not work. Okay, I'm not worried about that. I just want to let you know that sometimes these don't work, and it is just, oh yes, thank you very much, a Knight of Knee, I appreciate it. It is just part of the process. If I had more time, I would actually go through and do a little bit more cleaning, and I would use some glue and all of the other things. Stupid question, is having a cat an issue for 3D printing, as in cat hair around the house? I would say that having the cat walk over the 3D printer while you're actually doing stuff is more of a threat. I don't think so, as long as you don't have a lot of dander in the air. We have a HEPA filter that we run full time at the house, but I don't think having a pet inside, I would be very careful that they cannot get up to your 3D printer, not so much for the sake of the 3D printer, but for the animal. That's a nozzle at 215 degrees, and even the heat bed is heated up to, I think, somewhere around 85 degrees. I would not want a pet to be able to get up to a point where they could reach that. All right, before I switch back to the presentation, I've got a couple more things I want to cover in the presentation, but I want to show you a few more possibilities of things you can print. This is a soap dish, and this was printed in orange PET G, I believe. So this is the top section where you can put in 2 bars of soap or something else that needs to dry, maybe even a toothbrush. And then there's a bottom plate for just the liquid that drops out while it's drying. I did a case for a Raspberry Pi Zero. I have to give credit, somebody else actually did the case. I asked a person online if they could put in this little tab on the end so it could fit on a key ring. relatively minor change. It was above my capabilities, but they were kind enough to accommodate. And now I've got a case for Raspberry Pi Zero, along with a cover that says Calliope. These were the original mask clips. When I first got the printer in May of 2020, this was one of the first things I started printing because I knew there was a direct need for these in the healthcare industry. These go around the back of your head, and then you take the elastic strap on a disposable mask and you hook them into one of these points on both sides. It takes the pressure off your ears. And so we printed up a whole bunch of these. I was sending out tons of these to hospitals and other medical groups. This is a little wrapper. Yes, please.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. There's a few questions from the GoToMeeting questions.
Yeah.
First, Camille, he's recommending Magigoo.
Yes.
I've never heard of it myself, but.
Nor I, to be honest, but I absolutely believe that there are a whole bunch of different substances that you can use on the metal plate that will help keep the print down long enough for it to finish printing, which solves a problem you just saw when I was trying to do printing. And it can be as simple as just a glue stick or hairspray, but absolutely, if a Magigoo works for you, fantastic.
And James is asking, how often does this happen? So as far as the failure.
The failure, absolutely. So today was an off day. I really should have taken the time to clean the metal sheets, and I know I made that goof in not preparing for it. Normally you'll get you'll get at least 75% good. If everything's working well, you might get one failed print out of 10. The other 9 are just fine. So the idea is set up a print with 7 or 8 of these all down once you know that things are working well, and you can print 7 or 8 at the same time. Then you come back in an hour and a half, you pick them all up and you say, hey, give me 8 more. And you start up another hour and a half process and set yourself a timer to come down and check on it. Most of the time, it just plain works. Occasionally, it'll screw up. So it does help actually to leave a little webcam that you can use to check on it from time to time, so you don't waste too much filament if something goes wrong.
Awesome, thank you. And finally, Deshant is asking, could you show the finished product again, the toothpaste?
Yeah, and 100%. It's a little bit hard because the focus doesn't work all that well here. But this is the toothpaste tube squeezer, and it's just a thin opening there that is just right for the bottom of a tube of toothpaste. And you take this and you slide it up the tube, pushing the toothpaste along with it and keeping the toothpaste up at the top. And this is a relatively tight fit, which is exactly what you want to keep the toothpaste up at the top of the tube. It's a little bit like rolling it by hand. This is just easier for me, and it's just a very easy print. I wanted to have something I could show you that would work.
And one more and I'll go away. Ken is asking, do you have any opinions on resin 3D printers?
I won't cover resin 3D printers here, and that's not because they don't have value. It's just a different technology. Instead of using filament, a resin 3D printer takes a bath of this resin goo. You have your print plate up at the top of it, and a laser shines up through the resin and heats the resin to the right temperature that it will stick to the plate. And then as you do layer by layer, that plate moves up and up and up and up and up and up away from the little pool of existing resin. A totally worthwhile approach, just a different type of 3D printing. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about that, they do cover that briefly in the book that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Prusa has an SL1, I think, a resin printer that you can look at, and it talks a little bit more about how it works. I'm sure YouTube has hundreds of videos on watching a resin printer work. Any others, Keith?
No, that's it. Thank you, Bill.
Sounds great. Absolutely. Hey, appreciate it. So I'm going to switch back to the presentation. We just got a couple more things to cover, and then we can look at other questions as well. Hold on just a moment. So, there we go. So we're back to examples. There we go. Couple of things that would be common questions. Can you print in more than one color? Yes, and sort of, or kind of the answer. This particular printer really only wants to print in one color at a time. However, if I want to print the bottom 0.4 millimeters in one color, and then I want to move up and I want to print the next 0.6 millimeters in a different color, and I want to move up and I want to print the top, let's say 0.5 millimeter in another color, I can do that. I can actually tell the printer to stop at a certain layer so to allow me to pull out the old filament and put in new filament, and then I can switch colors. It's a little bit worky, and it only works on particular layers. The big brother for this printer, which I believe is called the Mark III, www.prusa3d.com. Let me just make sure I've got the name right. The big brother for it, yes, it's the MK3S Plus, has what's called a multi-material add-on. This sits on top of the 3D printer. It takes in up to 5 different colors of material, and it knows when to cut off the one type of material and inject another. So just a little bit before that's needed at the nozzle, we cut off the old color and we put in a new color. So you really can truly do multiple color 3D printing with that approach. It's a little bit more expensive. That printer is a little bit more expensive, but not terribly. So if you need multiple colors, you can do that. Can you print with materials stronger than plastic? Yes, probably not on home units. You can buy very, very expensive 3D printers if you choose to. I once took that Raspberry Pi case that I was trying to print, and I went over to a service bureau and I said, how much is it to print it? And it said, oh, it's like $5.45 or whatever it was. I said, how much is it to print it if I want it in platinum? And I don't remember the exact number, but I do remember it being somewhere around $60,000, but you could get it. There was at least one company that would be willing to print that in platinum for you. Aluminum is obviously much better option. You could get a very good solid metal print with aluminum. Can you print food? Yes, you can. We talked about this a little bit on the pre-show banter. There are specialized printers for chocolate, pasta, and pancakes. These are more up in the $2,000 to $4,000 range, but you can do your own designs, and they have special types of chocolate or pasta or pancake mix that you feed in. You can't just take in any chocolate and print it, but you can absolutely do your own custom designed chocolate. How long does it take to print? Well, some of them can be as short as 10 minutes. Most of them tend to be somewhere 25 to 50 minutes, depending on the complexity and the amount of material. Some of the larger ones can take more than a day. So you really want to make sure that your print bed is nice and clean before you start something like that, because you don't want to waste a lot. All right. If you don't have a printer, well, you've got some good options. One is, do you have a local maker space? Not everybody has one within driving distance, but if you do, the whole concept of a maker space is, let's get a room or a building with all kinds of building tools, and they will commonly include at least a couple of 3D printers as options. You usually buy a membership saying I want to be part of this for a month or 2 months or a year, and then you get access to all of the tools and instructions and learning nights and so on. It's well worth doing. It also is very helpful if you're doing this for the first time, because you may be able to sit down with somebody who's done it before and just walk through a couple of test prints. The other one is a 3D printing service. I'm not obviously getting a commission from Treat Stock and have no financial interest in them, but I've had good luck with them in the past. Before I got my 3D printer, I would commonly go there and say, here's what I'd like to have. Can you please get someone in your web of service people to print this? And I might be getting somebody in Colorado or Canada or Florida who's going to send it to me and then just mail it to me when they're done. They're relatively affordable too. It's you don't pay a whole lot for it. These are largely people who have a 3D printer that's not being used very heavily and would just like to make a little bit of extra money on the side. To buy your own, it's hard to come up with a hard number, but I would say somewhere between $300 and $1,000 is not a bad price range to consider. If that is way out of your range, then you may want to just consider using a service bureau for when you need it from time to time. But the nice part is if you can get a couple of friends or colleagues at work who want to share it, that's great. So go ahead and see if you can split the cost, buy a couple of spools of filament that you all think you might use, and you can obviously buy your own extra filament later, that's no problem. But if you have 4 people who might want to try it but can't really afford it, on their normal budget, everybody can put in, let's say $150, you can get a relatively nice setup and be able to just share it. The filament spools, depending on where you buy them, $20 to $50, but again, these last a long time, so it's not like they run out quickly. I already showed you a demo of the print coming up from the plate. Most of the time, it just plain works. So had that demo worked, you would have seen in about 28 minutes a finished toothpaste tube squeezer sitting on the plate, and you can just pick it up with a pair of pliers. If you get a flat spatula, that's helpful for peeling it off, and you have your finished product. Maybe just kind of go around the edges and see if there are any little bits of plastic left off and buff them off, maybe with sandpaper or just a fingernail. There's a book that I'll have a link for at the end. This is a little tough to find, but 3D Printing Failures is an excellent reference. There are so many ways that prints can fail or printers can give you trouble. This gentleman has put a lot of time into covering all the ways and what you do about them to fix them. You can find it up on Amazon. It is there as a print book. The catch is that somebody complained to Amazon about the PDF version of it. And Amazon said, oh, look, there are all these typos, please fix them and then resubmit, and took the PDF sale off. So I spoke to the gentleman who wrote it, and he said, yeah, I know, I'm going to go and restart. I don't have the printer or the PDF ready version of this, so I kind of have to start over again. So he'll have a new version out in 2022, but if you need this for your own printer, get the print version now. So references, the printers that I've talked about are all available at prusa3d.com. There's also the Ender line. I haven't used them, but I would say that those are similar in capabilities and similar in price as well. So Ender 3D printing, www.creality.com. And again, I can't speak creality.com. I can type almost, there we go. I can't speak to them, but I think they're very similar, and they go down to under 200 for what you might get. Filament, you can get tons of places. So don't feel like you have to stick with the manufacturer. You're not going to void a warranty by getting filament from a different place than you bought the printer. And let's see. For docs, the basics of 3D printing, that we talked about that earlier. You can buy it if you want the printed version. And 3D printing failures is the one I was talking about. This one is the paperback version is well worth getting. The Kindle version, you'll be able to get that in 2022. And the cable combs that I showed earlier, you can find those at thingiverse.com. I tend to start there because they've got a good range of stuff and a reasonably good search engine. Not perfect, you may spend a little while looking, but they'll let you download the STL original files, and then you generate the G-code that goes off to your printer, and out it comes. I hope the one thing you take away from this is not that I'm asking you to buy a 3D printer. I'm here simply to point out that this is doable. Anybody who can set up a printer can set up a 3D printer. It, like any other tool, you may look at it and say, well, I really don't need that. And I'm good with that statement. But if you would like to be able to do prototyping or print toys or print whatever, this is an easy way to get going in the technology. I had one, my next door neighbor's son was having a birthday party, and I realized way too late that I hadn't gotten anything for him, and went over and I grabbed what looks a little bit like Lego. It's not Lego, it's not the trademarked Lego product. But they had bricks where you could customize the side of the brick. So I put the son's name on there and 4th birthday on the side. And out come these little bricks that he can now have that are customized just for him. It's the ability to do this yourself on your own schedule and try things out. I've got tons of things that I printed out. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm really going to use that. And off it goes in the trash. And I've had other things that have been really, really helpful, like those mask clips or the Ethernet combs. You have the range. It's all down to what's going to help you do your day job, or what's going to help you do things at home, or do you have kids who want to learn about this? You're giving them a head start and letting them understand the technology as on the same device that you can use to print things for your business. I did get some of the images from PreShow 3D, Thingiverse, and Made in Space for these for this presentation, so I want to thank them. I'm back, and if we want to switch over and talk a little bit more, if you've got questions, this is a great time. We've got a little time to cover those before we have to finish up.
Hey, Bill, I have one that Archana, I'm sorry if I'm killing your name, but he was asking about when you set it up to do like remote printing, kind of like some of the security vulnerabilities around that, but I believe that pretty much applies to any IoT device. But
oh, that's true, absolutely. The nice part is, as you buy it, these Prusa printers come with, they just use a USB flash drive to put the images in. You don't need an Ethernet connection at all. So there's nothing to remotely access. I load up the G-code files that I want onto a flash drive. I plug them into the side of the 3D printer. I can't show you it right here because it's off around on the other side. But that's how I get those files in. There's nothing to attack. There's no internet connection needed. Now, that said, you can actually hook these up to the internet, and the firmware on these printers will allow you to say, okay, what's the temperature? What are you printing right now? And I will give credit to Ordinary Viking for pointing out Octoprint, which is a piece of software that you can use to control the printer, send out print jobs, and run a camera that watches the printer all in one unit, including the OctoPi, which is Octoprint loaded on a Raspberry Pi, of course. And so you can have an internet connection if you want to do things like submitting jobs into a print queue and having the print one after the other. You still have to have somebody go down and take off the old job before you start the new one, but it makes it much easier to put up a print queue. I think what I'm trying to get to is they really don't have security issues because they don't need an internet connection by default. Octoprint, you would want to think about what ports do I have available and do I make any of them available to the outside world before you actually turn any of those features on.
And actually, this question is from me because I really have not had a lot of exposure to 3D printing yet.
That's fine.
But do any of these machines work with polypropylene?
With what?
Polypropylene, do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay.
That would be a better one for Google, and I'll admit idiocy on that one. There we go.
Okay. I was just curious. It popped into my head. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. What's the best, most useful security tool you've printed so far? Not much in the way of security. These tend to be more kind of practical. How can I use them around the house? How can I use them in different projects, types of tools? I think maybe the closest one would be that case for the Raspberry Pi Zero called the Calliope, because then I can put a Raspberry Pi Zero with Kali Linux in my pocket on my keyring. That's probably as close as I get, Noopy. Sounds expensive. We are noobs in this area. Yeah, the cost of the filament, carbon fiber filament will be more, absolutely. And you have to pay attention to whether your printer can handle that because the carbon fiber in the filament is very hard on the nozzle. So if you want to use carbon fiber, do a little research first and make sure that you've got a printer that can handle it, you have a nozzle that can handle it, or replacement nozzles at the very least. But the cost of this, I don't deny that when I just casually throw around numbers like $300 to $1,000, this is not an easy purchase for anybody unless you've got a business need for it and a business budget. I think I took about a year from when I first learned that this was even possible to when I actually sat down and put some money down to have one shipped to me from Czechoslovakia. And then another 4 months for it to actually arrive because they were slammed with orders. But I think that splitting the cost with other people with similar interests, or in your company, or people in your circle of friends, or people on your street, might not be a bad way to get going because nobody's in it for as much money. And for probably about $600, you can have a mini plus a couple of spools of filament. If your budget's even tighter than that, I think you can probably do this for about $400 with one of those Ender 3s, perhaps, off of C-Reality. Let me switch back. I don't think I'm going to do any more demos at the moment, so let me switch back. And if any of the other people on the call would like to get back on, feel free. Would Pi with Octo be worthwhile for running its own network sensor programs, even just for practice? Yeah, you have a full OS on there. I believe you have full command line access. You could run stuff on there at the same time that you're running OctoPi. I don't believe there's any problem with that. Does temperature matter too much? It does. The printer is very sensitive to making sure that you get exactly the right temperature for the material you're printing right now. So I switch from PLA to PETG, and the target temperature where that will melt is different, but the printer knows that, and it knows that it needs to have it at a certain temperature to work. You also don't want to have it too cold in the room or too humid. Humid is actually the bigger problem. In a very humid climate, you want to keep the spools of filament in a box with a couple of pieces of the desiccant you get when you buy electronic gear, those little packets that say don't eat. Keep some of those in the container with your filament so they don't get too wet. There's a way to go and dry them out later. It's a little bit of a pain. You cook them in the oven for, like a half an hour at 80 degrees or something silly like that. I don't know the numbers, but it's much easier just to keep them dry. So I haven't been watching the questions. Has anybody else noticed some good ones that should be covered?
I'd just like to mention and parrot the comment that Trevor put into the GoToWebinar, is that I guess he has seen that some public libraries have 3D printers for use and you pay for the supplies, which is very cool.
That's elegant.
That's awesome.
That's a wonderful feature right there. See if your library has one. If not, see if they'll get one. It's entirely possible that you can convince them that they need to get one for you. Hey, that'd be wonderful. Absolutely. There are lots of ways to make this happen. If your makerspace has a lot of large woodworking tools but doesn't have much in the way of 3D printing, no problem. Suggest to them that, hey, I'll go and sign up for a membership if you'll get a 3D printer. And maybe even chip in $50 or something for the purchase and get your name put on a little tag saying, hey, this was courtesy of so-and-so. And you may get one for less than the cost of having it full time. That's great, Megan. Thank you for coming up the images. Wow, well done. Those are the 3D. Those are the awards.
Yeah, those are the Golden Buffalo Awards that we gave away for Hack to the Future, the event. I didn't print them, but one of our really awesome nerd herders, Ian Meyer, printed them for us. Came up with the whole design and everything. They were super awesome.
Oh,
yeah,
well done.
He made those, the Golden Buffalo Awards, and he also made two special awards with the clock logo that we had for Wild West Deadwood this year, and it was actually a working clock too.
Oh,
So,
well done. Well done.
So you can definitely do a lot of fun projects with 3D printers.
The people who came in last place, by the way, we didn't show them on that slide, Megan, but the people who came in last place got the Golden Buffalo Chip Awards.
Oh,
and those were mailed to their homes very recently. Yeah.
I see what you did there.
You what?
Some people probably don't know that reference, but that's funny. That's a good one.
Buffalo droppings. Let's put it that way. There we go.
Yes.
EvaDry desiccators are rechargeable. Yes, there are ways you can actually get a unit that dries out the inside of a clear plastic case. I haven't assembled mine yet, but you can buy cases that will hold multiple spools of filament, feed them out when needed, and then keep the inside of the case clear and dry. You have to go and every once in a while just go and heat up the material inside to go and clear out the moisture that they've captured. Hey,
that's awesome. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody. We've already cut it too close on time and we're already over. Thank you for coming. If you've got other questions, I'm going to stay on the live chat channel for a little while. So if you didn't get your question answered, go and let me know. We'll try to go and get some answers for you. Shelby,
Yes.
back to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you so much, Bill, for doing such a fun presentation on such a great subject. I still remember when 3D printing was like a new thing that came out, and then when they came out with those little 3D pens you could buy, and that was like the cool new thing. So there's just so much fun stuff you can do and explore with 3D printing.
Fantastic.
As Bill mentioned, if you do have more questions, he is in our Discord server, so feel free to continue to ask and interact with other people there. We're going to close down the GoToWebinar now for everybody. One more reminder, if you enjoyed this Hackin' Cast, don't forget to check out the other ones we have coming up soon, along with our Purple Team Roundup in December. And thank you again, Bill. Hopefully we will see you in another Hackin' Cast.
You can't avoid it. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.